Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third in the series of the logistics exercise webinars. My name is Scott Cameron. I'm the one of the co-founders of Emergency Management Logistics Canada, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for today's session. So welcome. It's a beautiful spring day here in Calgary, and hopefully everyone else across the country is experiencing the same beautiful weather as spring emerges. Today's session is focused on an industrial accident using the recovery mindset, and I'm joined today by a number of panel members that I'm looking forward to having a conversation with. As we begin, I would like to just start with a land acknowledgement that we're gathered here on the traditional lands of the people from all parts of Turtle Island, and acknowledge the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people whose land we inhabit. Let us remember that Mother Earth has a rhythm to keep her lands healthy, and our jurisdictions represent artificial boundaries resulting from our settlement. That disasters are the result of the conflicts settlement has created with Mother Earth. Let us imagine a future that respects our relationships with the land and First Peoples. I would invite you all to use the chat function. You can start right away and introduce yourselves, where you're from, say hello to other people that are on the platform. We will try to keep an eye on the chat room for any questions. The format of the exercise today is that we will spend about 40 minutes having a conversation with our panel members. They're all here with us. And then we will move into a question and answer period after about 40 minutes, and we will wrap up on the hour. So this morning, I'm pleased to welcome our panel members from across the country. I will have each of them introduce themselves with a little bit about who they are and what brings them to this conversation today. I'll start with Steve. Good morning. Welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for the warm welcome. Hi, everyone. It's Steve Callies, Senior Lead of Contractor Compliance Emergency Preparedness in the mining realm with the organization just established called Elk Valley Resources. We're a subsidiary of a large global mining company called Glencore, just acquired by Glencore in the last 7 months. Previous to that, we were a business unit of another mining company called Teck Resources, which is moved on and is heavily focused into copper now. So my background is the past 2 decades in many different facets in emergency response. I took custody of the emergency preparedness program about 4 years ago. So in and around 250 responders with 4 operating sites where we process steel-making coal, not thermal coal, that's sold on the seaboard market. So a lot of mutual aid set up, working with our regional districts here and local government, of course, and First Nations. So hoping to be able to add some value to the conversation today. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Yeah, welcome, and hope all is well in southeastern British Columbia this morning. Mike, morning, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks, Scott. Other panelists, great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Good morning, potentially good afternoon, depending where participants are. Mike Olchuk, I am the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Winnipeg in the province of Manitoba. So largest urban municipality in the province, about 800,000 residents. I've been working for the city now for 5 years. Our Office of Emergency Management falls within the city's Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service Department. And we're responsible for everything, all 4 pillars: mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery, primarily operating the city EOC and coordinating all of the city services and departments whenever an emergency or disaster happens. So yeah, been with the city for about 5 years now. And prior to that, I spent 14 years with the province of Manitoba working in emergency management there. So various different roles over the course of that time. So again, yeah, very much appreciate being here and looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Peter, good morning.
Morning, Scott, or afternoon. I don't know who the afternoon is for, somebody in the East. Yeah, really pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me and to share this with the panelists. I'm Peter May. I'm the practice area lead, what we're calling organizational resilience within the consulting firm Trace & Associates, and I'm based in Calgary. And relevant to this conversation, so that's emergency management, business continuity, risk management, and health and safety. And prior to my consulting life, I spent a couple decades in industry, fertilizer, chemicals, dealing with transportation and storage, and I never had to deal with one exactly like you're putting us through, but I can think about it. So it's really a pleasure to be able to share the stage, so to speak, with all of you.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Wade, I noticed that this slide does not have your image on it, so but I don't want to forget about you and invite you to introduce yourself. I'll make it up at the conference in the fall.
No worries. Wade Croning, I work for Flint Hills Resources out of Hardisty. I've got approximately 35 years of oil and gas experience. Part of that was getting into the emergency management side of things accidentally, where no one else was really excited about doing it. So I got involved on that side of it. Also too involved with the Canadian Standards Association Z 246.1 and .2. I'm the chair of that technical committee for emergency preparedness and response. And also too involved with the Hardisty Mutual Aid Group out here in Hardisty, and also too became a town councillor and a deputy dem, which has been interesting. So that's somewhat of my background.
Great. Thanks. And we should mention, Steve, you didn't mention this one, but I believe you're part of your municipal council as well. So
yeah, that's right.
A number of different perspectives on the panel today. Thomas, welcome from the Canadian Red Cross.
Thanks, Scott. Morning, everybody. Morning for me. I'm out in BC with Steve. Sorry I was late, just doing school drop-off before showing up here, but yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Yeah, my name's Thomas Fogg. I work in the logistics department with the Canadian Red Cross. Started off in the operational side around emergency management, but found my way into logistics, where my true calling was, as they say. I've been there for about 10 years. I'm located in BC, but I support teams across Canada around emergency response and recovery. And yeah, really happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, and looking forward to some discussion.
Great. Thanks so much. As we developed these scenarios and talked about this webinar series, first of all, thanks to our partner organizations in this production, IAEM Canada, NAIT, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, ICS Canada, Team Rubicon Canada, Epic Podcasts, CRHNet, and ourselves, EML Canada. It was important to us that we had insights and perspectives from many different sectors, because the more we can do some silo busting in this work around logistics, the better we are as Canadians. So great to have in this particular panel insights from the private sector, industry, consulting, the NGO, municipalities. So really looking forward to this. As we look at the scenario, I want to give a shout out to Dave Brand for his work on pulling these scenarios together. All three of them, I offered him the opportunity to run through this scenario with everybody. He graciously declined, but I see him here on the call. So if there's any deep questions, we might defer them to Dave. We're back in Central City, Liberty County. They've had quite the year, starting in February with a flood a localized flooding event. The following month, they had a urban interface wildfire, and here they are 1 month later dealing with a train derailment and a spill into their waterways. Sorry, I just got distracted by a message on my screen. So the scenario that just sets up the conversation today. We're not trying to resolve the scenario necessarily. We're trying to use the scenario as a launching pad for some of the questions that we've worked with the panel members on. So a major fire, hazardous material spill in the river, right within the city. Key containment resources were inaccessible due to the location of the evacuated industrial zone. So while they were prepared, they don't have access to the things that they had prepared for. A number of hazardous substances spilled into the river, reaching the coast within 6 hours. The spill compromised the city's South Water Treatment Plant, but probably more relevant to this scenario is the impact that it has downstream environmentally and in terms of water supply to a neighboring community. So I believe Jagmeet has just put the scenario into your Dropbox. Feel free to use this scenario, throw it on your coffee table at work, use it as an exercise tool. That is part of this webinar series experience. So I just want to start, with the following question. In your experience, what are some potential sources of products, services, supplies available locally or regionally that may require for a situation of this nature? Wade, do you mind if you want to kick that off, and then maybe I'll turn it over to Mike.
Sure. So, from our experience, your spill co-ops, booms, those kind of things that we'd be going off of, and then we'd be pulling off of industry, with, in our particular area, the Hardisty Mutual Aid Group has an equipment list and personnel list that they can access in a heck of a hurry. Also, too, with the municipalities, we're pulling, off of some of their capabilities as well, more and more so, to marshal some of those resources. We also sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's great the mutual aid group, but just for folks on the call, just tell us a little bit about the nature of the Hardisty area. Like it's an important industrial hub for Canada's gas and oil sector.
Well, yeah, 80% of all the crude oil that's produced in the Western Sedimentary Basin comes through Hardisty. A lot of people don't realize that. It's like a miniature Cushing, Oklahoma, out in the middle of nowhere.
And so there's like 7 industries or 7 big plants and distribution centers. So having that mutual aid group is really important. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, actually, absolutely it was. I mean, we had to have a significant incident before we realized how important it was that we formalized the mutual aid group, and also to incorporating municipalities, in the training, and also too as creating a partnership, as well as with the province. Those were some of the things that we were lacking previously. We were very, what do you want to call it? I mean, we would pull in, shell up, and say, well, each individual company can handle their emergencies by themselves, and we found out very quickly we couldn't.
Yeah. Mike, from an urban perspective, I mean, here on the panel, you're probably the closest to this municipality. It's smaller in size, of course, but from a municipal perspective, talk to me a little bit about securing products, service, supplies.
Yeah, no, thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. So yeah, I think from our perspective, kind of that immediacy of it is with this being a rail incident, that pre-established linkage that we've got with our rail partners and our rail service providers. They've kind of got those connection points, at least here in the Winnipeg area, for that dangerous good response, the environmental response, the cleanup, and that kind of thing. So we would have, excuse me, some level of, or we do have a level of hazmat capability within our fire paramedic service type of thing, with some resources that would obviously be responding to a circumstance like this. But just given the scope and scale, I think right away, building on what Wade was saying, just kind of that importance of that intermunicipal support, or in the example of the scenario, inter-county support potentially, just those linkages and leveraging those resources from the partners around. Hopefully we've had that opportunity to plan together and work together and train together before something like this happens, to make it that much more smooth, if something like this does go smooth as it can be. This scope and scale right away as well, for us on that situation assessment. We're going up to the province as well. They're going to have a level of capability and resources on the environmental emergency response side. Again, I think similar to some things like Wade was speaking to with booms, containment mechanisms, those kinds of things, potentially requesting up to federal assistance as well, just given the population, the area affected here, that kind of thing. That would be something that we're probably working down in our EOC on. Non-government support as well. We've got some great partnerships here with our non-government organizations. Thomas, our partner in the Canadian Red Cross, that's a group for us here in the city of Winnipeg that we work very regularly and frequently with. So, again, I'm trying to look at this saying, okay, life safety for responders, obviously, if we're talking the response, but as we progress into that recovery piece, the impacts on people. So our emergency social services team, what are we doing to support anyone? I know the scenario talks about evacuating an industrial area only, but potentially with burn off, and where is that going? What are our linkages and connection points to air quality testing? So those are going to be questions that we're getting from our citizens with that burn off. What are the potential impacts from that on the community around? In addition to that, even soil safety as we kind of progress further into recovery. So, linking to our partners in public health, what do we look at for potential soil implications, those kinds of things. So yeah, no, it's one of those events where you look at the scope and scale of this, and even the water component for us as a utility provider. I kind of looked at that and say, okay, they've shut off their containment. What have we got for connections into industry and private sector for some potential solution options on backup water and provision of water support, communication to our critical customers, healthcare, education, shelter partners, a very big list of people that we would be providing water to as a utility provider. So making sure that we're messaging to them and then potentially working to support them.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. I mean, you addressed a couple important things there. First of all, that relationship piece of having those conversations in advance. But from a logistics perspective, you noted just several different environmental connections and water testing and quality and so on. All those things are logistics. Those are the logistics that people need to know about in advance, that they need to be pre-thinking. So, I'm hoping that folks that are on the call today are sort of madly jotting down, oh, hadn't thought of those people or so on. Steve, what does this sort of procurement piece look like for folks in your part of the country? And maybe a perspective from industry in terms of sharing resources. We maybe sometimes forget that industry has a lot of equipment and supplies and knowledge and expertise.
Yeah, exactly. When this question came across for consideration, Scott, I did look at it with that lens of what is private industry, where do they play a role, along with my my hat of the municipal councillor as well. So if you'll entertain me, I'll try to touch on all of those. And I think some of it will be echoed in what we've already heard from the other two. But and to build off of what you just said, this is certainly going to be a layered response. And the best logistics in my mind are always well informed from that pre-planning part of things. So, understanding that a derailment with these particular chemicals is a credible risk in that community, the more that we can do on the front end of knowing where those stakeholders, where those private industries can support pre-game, will really help support success. And my experience in a lot of cases, it's still reactionary. A lot of communities, especially on the smaller scale, haven't spent the time and invested financially to actually build those plans up. So, I also hope that some folks on the call are furiously scribbling, and other municipal councillors have an opportunity to see that, because it's all things that you don't need it until you need it. So I broke it really into 5 buckets, and the first and foremost, which we've heard a lot about, is the short term is the hazardous materials response and containment. And out here we'd be formally as Emergency Management BC, so we'd be looking to look at the pre-established plans, but then much like Mike had mentioned, there's the other rail partners. There's CN and CPKC, or Canadian Pacific Kansas City, out here, that will have their own teams if we've been cut off from our own supplies, that can add support and mutual aid for containment with their own hazmat capabilities. Private contractors, out our way, there's Quantum Murray, Trevita, and I'm not here to sell either of those, but they're all things to consider out, at least in our neck of the woods. And then with the marine side of things, there's always the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation. I think they're licensed under the Canadian Coast Guard, so I mean that's a partner to consider. Second bucket would be the water supply and treatment support. This is where that that prudent pre-planning really has some immediate impact, especially when we're trying to logistically gather things quickly. We have Canadian Red Cross on the call, so that'd be a key player in my mind, whether it be bulk portable water suppliers, or potable water, pardon me. Engagement and having a robust plan with our public works department, I think, is something that we ought to consider if this is a credible risk in your community with these. And moving into the next one would be the public health and environmental side of things, whether it's provincial health authorities. This particular scenario has 2 universities in the community, so I mean there's a stakeholder to consider on whether it be long-term recovery support on if this was to occur, what are we going to do, and what do we have to have right now to minimize? What do we have to have longer term as we transition from response to recovery? And even the ECCC, the Environment and Change, Climate Change Canada, is a stake in that as well. Moving into my 4th bucket would be starting and having some pre-planning in and around our critical infrastructure. First off, just even understanding what do we call critical infrastructure, and what may be impacted, and the behind the scenes setup between stakeholders, like out here would be BC Hydro, Fortis BC for gas, TELUS, Shaw Communications, and then whether it's infrastructure, bridge protection, transport corridors, you may need local heavy equipment contractors. This is where industry like us, we can, you look at the wildfires out in BC last year, had it been necessary, we have enormous machinery that we can move around rather quickly, provided that transport routes are still established, not D6 dozers, but actual D11s and excavators. And so that's really, I think, a key piece on that infrastructure protection, along with recovery, where I think industry can help, along with, and I should have mentioned this on the first bit, but the hazmat side of things, underutilized. We had the wildfires in last 2 summers ago, and 250 responders, all capable, but we hadn't done a great job in the province of BC of the left hand talking to the right hand, where we couldn't actually mobilize the mine rescue people to support frontline wildfire, where it certainly could have been an addition. So I think that's a real opportunity for at least this province to consider Emergency Management BC to talk with the Ministry of Mines and say, hey, where do your folks fit when there's larger scale? Because certainly we are hazmat trained more onto this scenario. And it's just an opportunity for us to explore. And then, of course, the last one is just that overall coordination support. Trained experts in emergency operations centers, so whether it's coming to fill roles that perhaps are thin at the onset, we would be able to supply people to fit a logistics role in the temporary if there was some mobilization delays, along with other considerations might be your regional business or chamber networks. The Chamber of Commerce is sometimes overlooked as well, as that they're going to be an avenue to pull in other resources, especially if in this scenario we've been cut off from hazmat supplies. Well, we have those pre-established relationships with the chamber. That's a trigger point for us. Where it's like engage the chamber and let them do their part and reduce a little bit of the work. And to close off, we've already mentioned NGOs, so I won't touch much on that. But there's also our partners in the First Nations and even the NAIT contractor and logistics, right? Like that's another avenue that I think that we're getting much better, at least out this way of engaging. Some excellent resource there that are also significantly impacted and are more than willing to help support to the effort. So hope you don't mind a bit of the long-winded there, but I did bucket it so that it captures that municipal view along with where private industry can fit.
Yeah, no, I could hear pens and pencils scratching away. We've got a number of other questions, but I do want to, Peter, Thomas, anything that you'd like to add to this question before we jump into the second question?
I'm happy just to add a couple things. It's some really great points. I should just say what they said, but just to add a couple things. I mean, it really highlights the need to pre-plan. Like this is probably some version of a reasonably possible scenario in this area. So as these other gentlemen have already said, like that pre-planning and thinking back to my early days in emergency management, where we had like one page near the back of an emergency plan that had a list of excavators, like obviously things have well developed since then, but just so many moving parts that everybody's identified in different groups and a shared understanding of who has what and who's bringing what where and how's that going to work, which is only done by pre-planning and meeting ahead of time, just like these folks said. The procurement process and in an emergency is very important to have that sorted out. I think the only other thing I would add is just with all these different kinds of organizations, some of them are going to be very well trained, very well versed in what to do and how to work together, and others are going to be less so. And so just again, the more time you can spend ahead of time trying to develop an understanding of when Scott's excavating shows up, this is kind of how it works. That's helpful. So I think that's all I'd really add to this. There's a lot of moving parts in this scenario, and I think that's what I'll add for now.
Great, thanks, Peter. Thomas, I'm going to ask you to sort of kick us off on sort of this next question, because and this question, as we were chatting, Mike and I were chatting about this one, so we put this in. The Canadian Red Cross, of course, you're there in the response side, but you're also there in the recovery. And you were one of the first organizations to come to mind from a recovery perspective, especially around the work that you're continuing to do in Jasper following the fires last year. But when does it, from a logistics perspective, when does it sort of switch from being a recovery operation to being or being a response operation to being a recovery operation? Is there a trigger, a series of triggers?
I mean, it's a great question. It's probably quite nuanced in every scenario. From my own personal experience, from what I've seen and what we do with Red Cross, I think the first thing to note probably would just be that ideally your recovery is actually starting the moment the event happens. I'm not saying it happens every time. It's hard to do when you're scrambling to try and make sure that people are safe and they're out of danger and that you're containing the issue. But when you think about it, recovery starts as soon as the event is triggered. So if you have the capacity in your teams to be, or if I shouldn't be speaking to you, if we have the capacity in our team, we're kind of setting aside a planning department who is already looking at, okay, what would the recovery look like for this? But generally speaking, I would suggest that the recovery phase starts when community is able to not only return home, but start returning to normalcy. whatever that looks like. So the pre-event normalcy, it's never like it's going to take years, decades to actually get back to normal. But that's kind of when I would say that the shift happens when you're actually focusing on, okay, well, what does normal life look like? And we're aiming to get to there rather than just the getting people out of harm's way and that. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah. Well, it also,
yeah.
It makes me wonder. So Canadian Red Cross, of course, you're doing work across this country and internationally. From a logistics perspective, what can communities be doing to help you, like the Canadian Red Cross, be better equipped to help out when you arrive in a community or activate your own local volunteers? What are some of those logistics things that can be done up front?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I was in the last question, I was thinking I was going to have to do a little shameless plug for the CRC and try and sell it, but it's great. There's some good interest in it. And yeah, I mean, to that question, I would, again, all I've learned from my time is that every situation is different. And that's how we kind of prefer to approach events. So essentially, working with the communities to figure out what the needs are, and then working towards some sort of solution with it. So I would say the best thing any community or industry partner or organization can do to see what that would, to kind of pre-plan, get it moving in advance, would be, reaching out to the Canadian Red Cross and looking at your resources and where we might plug in. We're an incredibly adaptable and flexible organization. We'll do way too many things sometimes, but as far as Red Cross stepping in to support, we tend to try and be as low impact as possible and support where it's needed. So understanding where you might have those difficulties in delivering some levels of support, and seeing if Red Cross can kind of patch in and deliver that, would be the kind of the general approach. Logistically speaking, it's I guess I would just note that we don't have resources like some communities and industries do. We're not going to rock in with our own CRC branded boom cranes and stuff like that. But we have a highly advanced procurement team. Peter, really good note on getting your procurement straight. Sometimes the slowest moving piece of any of this is paperwork. Is just trying to get things in order so you can get funding, so you can buy the things that you need to buy. And I don't know about everybody's experience in that, but I've seen it in our own experience. It can be very challenging to figure out the paperwork. So having that sorted at everybody's agencies as much as possible before an event happens, but also knowing that the Red Cross has a very a maturing and getting into more advanced kind of procurement team and structure, and we can and will support with a lot of turnkey solutions where we'll just go out to industry partners and find what our community partners are requiring and stuff. So yeah,
great, thanks. And I'm I don't think you need to apologize for shameless plugs. I mean, there's shamelessly, Canada is here for a purpose, and it's to help those local communities identify the products and services they have, so that when an organization like the Canadian Red Cross comes, you can at least tap into whatever local or regional resources exist. Mike, I'm going to go back over to you. Great question. Some thoughts on a response to the question about when does it shift?
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, no, it's and further to our dialogue beforehand, I think that's one of the challenges that we face at a community level when something like this happens, obviously. And to me, Thomas hit it or nailed it there with the comment about, I think a critical element in all of this is when does it transition how long does it go? I mean, that's determined by the speed and pace of recovery at the community level. So maintaining kind of that dialogue, right? It's, again, speaking on behalf of government, it's a very sensitive piece that we need to be in tune to. If we're signaling that the event is done and we've moved on and things are closed off kind of thing, and the community obviously is still recovering, bit of a push and pull there. But regardless, that's a very fine balance to achieve kind of thing, right? Yeah, so I think really a key indicator is that kind of that community stabilization for us as a local authority, as we're bringing some of our critical services back online that we've had to shut down, that are there as a part of the key service delivery in the community, as well as some of those support mechanisms to the community, the normalization of things. For example, perhaps recreational services in the community have stopped because of this event. So the ability to bring some of that community normalization back on, I think ties in. One of the balances as well for us is how long does it go? So for us in emergency management, we have obviously our regular day jobs. We're there for an event happening, but then as that event prolongs, that's time that we're not spending conducting that training, that pre-planning, that relationship building, all of that. And again, not that that long-term recovery is not an important piece, it's critical, but how do we achieve that balance? So how long as an emergency management group do we be or do we maintain our involvement in that? Where is there potential to set up a task force or for something, perhaps something longer term that kind of takes on that rebuild if that's where the case is at, or those kinds of things. So funding ties in as well. If we're looking at a longer term scenario and the ongoing cost associated with the logistics of bringing in supplies, additional contracts, things like that. So how do we manage that? And I really appreciated the point that Peter made about the procurement pieces and trying to plan out as much of that as you can in advance, because that definitely helps into that recovery period where finance and legal and risk management are kind of coming back to reconcile costs, which is critical. So again, some of those pre-event pieces, if you can get those in place, that will help as you get into that longer term recovery.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm going to move on to question 3. I'm going to hit Wade and Peter. Just encourage those of you, Adam, I see your hand up, but I'm wondering if you might throw your question into the chat area, and so that we can start to build towards that. Outside of the box, and Steve, you were starting to talk about some of the big heavy equipment, but Wade or Peter, I'm just going to come back to you in terms of, what are some of those big outside the box thinking that, from a logistics perspective, that might emerge in a situation like this?
Well, especially with the heavy industry that we have in Hardisty, we have a lot of access, not excess, access to equipment, from different contractors that maybe the municipality is not aware of, and can get a hold of that fairly quickly. It's that that public-private partnership building, because for the longest time, I think people think that municipalities or industry, they were very used to doing things on their own, and essentially dealing with their emergencies on their own, and not realizing the ripple effect, second and third order effects, to their community on that front. So they are critical. What we've found over the last few years is building those partnerships, and some nuggets that you get through those developments, where municipalities are telling us, hey, we can do this for you, and industry going, hey, we can do this for you, and they're going, oh gee, I didn't know that. And it's just having those conversations, they're huge, and a lot of times it's just picking up the phone and having those frank conversations of where we're at, and you find out fairly quickly where your gaps are when you do have those conversations. So that's what I found, and there are some benefits with when Steve was mentioning having access to heavy equipment that they can, lend to the municipality, to help, with that, whether it's recovery or, managing the initial emergency and personnel. Sorry, did I answer that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Peter, I'm gonna get your thoughts on this and start to scroll over to his question 4. Before you respond, though, I do encourage folks on the call to throw your questions into the meeting chat. We'll keep going with the questions, even though we're at that 40-minute mark, and then we'll start to embed some questions in as well. Peter.
Sure. I don't know if this is outside the box, but from a non-industry perspective, perhaps, as an example, one of the things we've worked with a couple clients doing is they would be in the provision of social services to people type of thing. And so we've engaged them we didn't come at it from an emergency management perspective, more like the continuity of service. So back to that pre-planning. So rather than thinking about it as how do we respond to emergency X, Y, or Z, it's like what happens if we lose our ability to do this thing. So for example, providing housing for people in need, right? So the question is pre-thinking out, like where can we do that? What kind of relationships or partnerships or with whom would we need to create in order to provide that service to those people if we could not provide, in this case, the housing available, as an example. So just kind of taking from a pre-planning perspective, to me, it all seems to come back to pre-planning, but a pre-planning perspective, thinking through things, not necessarily just through an emergency lens, but our organization is here to do this, and what if we can't do that? And then regardless of how it happens. So that's perhaps the one thing I'd add at this point.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And it's a great segue into the next question. Thomas, we were chatting about this the other day, that people's livelihoods are the supply chain from a local perspective. So when that's compromised, how does that affect our ability to access supplies? Do you want to tackle that one, and then maybe I'm going to pop down to Steve for some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's it seems like a pretty key piece of the whole transition from response to recovery is I think one big piece about the public-private and NGO kind of interface when supporting the community that it's gone through a major event. One thing we're always cognizant of is trying to invest as much in the community themselves. So not importing things when you don't have to, like trying to find those local sellers, local suppliers of what's required in that region. It's exactly for this purpose, is to try and prop up and support local livelihoods as we're working through this event. But something we've just recently kind of come across, or maybe just kind of dawned on me recently, I'm sure we've seen it before, but it's just the impact it has when a town loses all, their business district, or even the workforce that worked in that business. So, getting a lot of responses like, yeah, we'd love to help, but we lost all of our equipment in the fire, or I have my equipment, but I'm so strapped due to last year. Like, can you guarantee that I can be like I'll have payment in the next week, kind of thing? There's those types of really personal things that happen in these events, and so we're looking at it from a systematic supply chain. Let's just move materials and goods, but just kind of a recognition that those materials and goods are always attached to somebody's story, and they've been impacted if you're trying to support that local community. So it's a fine balance from what I've seen. It's you in the response phase, it's like, well, if we can't get it locally, we just got to go keep moving out, fly things in if you need to fly things in because they need it right now. But as you transition into recovery, the focus in the local supply chain and logistics, I would I would assume would be more on the like supporting local businesses and seeing where they can how the response mechanisms in each county in each region can kind of support the local community.
Excellent. Yeah, the whole notion of stimulating local economic recovery, they're the ones that need that stimulus, and keeping in mind that folks that are in business of supplying have their own supply chain. They have their own contacts, just like we have a whole network of people here in emergency management. Those suppliers also have their contacts typically outside of the community where they can activate their own supply chain. Steve, this has got to be one of those things that is on your mind if you switch from well, not necessarily from your industrial hat, but to your municipal hat, that stimulating local economic recovery. I don't know if you want to chime in on this.
Yeah, it definitely impacts both, but I was ruminating on it while Thomas was talking from a municipal lens, and first off, yeah, what he said, I can echo all of that, just as we heard earlier. But I find that with this group, it's a bit of a. I mean, we're preaching to the converted here. I suspect that most people that have joined the call already have some semblance of we need to consider these things, but my experience in the political arena, along with the public at large, most people don't think of how supply chain can actually impact. You just, you look at, and it's with a little bit of levity, the toilet paper shortage at the beginning of COVID seemed ridiculous, but there was some real things that we're still living with coming out of that pandemic that have carried over for much longer than ever anticipated. So from a local municipal side of things, just out of the beginning, this scenario talks about how we've lost access to the hazmat capability there. So not only is it just the response, but longer term, we have clean water, we have fuel, we have medical supplies, that equipment coming in for the recovery process or even containment, and then that really starts to cascade into the economic shocks that we'll start to feel, whether it's locally or interruptions is we start to see suppliers shift when you can't bring things to central town, then they're going to go somewhere else. It's just the supply and demand nature of it, and it starts to slow things down. But really what I would focus on most here, which is often overlooked, is that as this strain continues, there's a significant impact to mental health. It really is, especially when there's the compoundment of the economic impacts, but it's overall socioeconomic in that my business can't run. I'm let's say I'm a river guide. That's a big thing, to lose that small business livelihood. So there's that, but then that starts to carry over into the political arena of like, well, council's not doing enough yet, or our department responded awful, and you see all the social media impacts there as well. So I can't enforce or reinforce enough that pre-planning to be as effective as possible to consider those contingencies, because the supply chain will have this giant cascading impact, which not always is considered. And I think it's really prudent for municipalities to have that business continuity plan prior to a disaster, because that's really going to be key. Is what are we going to do when these local businesses are impacted and we can't get things in that we need, and what's the short, medium, and long term measures of success in keeping the business continuity going. So that carries back into both private industry as well. Is that business continuity piece is often overlooked until things have gone wrong, and now we're going to do much better at it because we learned our lesson. But we've had enough things over the years. Look at Fort McMurray fires. We can use those as great opportunities to learn from, for sure. So that's what I would have to add. Thanks.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult to have these conversations about logistics without trust and relationship creeping into the conversation. And oftentimes, governments have difficulty with some of that trust, and especially if you have a supplier who's willing and capable of helping out, and they're standing outside the yellow tape without the opportunity to even engage in that. And municipal governments aren't the only I mean, we know that our social policy here in Canada is that local governments are the ones responsible for the disasters in their own jurisdictions. But there's also these other government departments. And Mike, I'm going to go to you on this one, where there's public health, safety, you know, who are the groups and organizations from a logistics perspective that we need to have on speed dial for situations like this? Because there's so much, quality testing and, making sure that safety standards are back. And before you answer that, Mike, I'm going to just remind folks, throw your questions into the chat. We've still got a few minutes to be able to take any questions, and we're on to our last question. So, Mike, some thoughts on, who are some of those quality control departments that we need to keep in mind?
Sounds good. No, thank you for that, Scott. I appreciate it. And I think building on some of the comments from the other panelists, here's kind of a wrap-up question for our session today. But for us, it would be that component about emergency social services. So for us as a municipality, that is a core group that takes lead on impacted citizens in our community. So the mechanisms and the systems that they put in place in response to something like this, and then through that recovery period. So I think it was Steve that had just mentioned the impacts on mental health, right? Like how significant these events can be in something like this, where the scenario involves a train derailment, and the amount of fear and dread associated with that, right? A black toxic cloud that's burning off, and the impacts from that type of thing, and then no access to water. So for us, our emergency social services team, our linkage to our community partners is critical here. So we have a number of Indigenous organizations in the city. So working with those groups to ensure that the support is there in that recovery period. Newcomer serving organizations. So ensuring that, we're engaging there appropriately from both a cultural standpoint and many other aspects. Reaching out and partnering with our seniors organizations. We've got a number of great seniors organizations in our community that have established partnerships already, have that level of trust. So working with them through that longer term recovery period. We've got some really great organizations working with people with disabilities in the community. So again, making sure that we're tying in and linking there. So from a health perspective, that is an interesting one, where for us as a municipality, we're providing pre-hospital care, but then it's another level of government that's providing the actual healthcare services and the public health. So again, that partnership with them and understanding, okay, well, we're that direct connection to the citizens when this type of an event happens, but that continuity of care piece is occurring at another level. So, tying them in through our emergency operations center, through our ongoing recovery efforts, the connections that they'll have to those logistical support items that the community may need. The pets is a critical, important one. I know for our emergency social services team, oftentimes people won't obviously evacuate without their pets, right? They're a critical member of families, loved ones, those kinds of things. So what have we got set up to provide support there? So we have a provision of animal services through our city. So we'll tie in that group through our emergency operations center. But again, there's some critical partners when it comes to nonprofit, non-government animal support, those kinds of things. So, leveraging their capability. But kennels, food, what are the pathways to those, especially when it is an extended event kind of thing. So yeah, many aspects.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I see a question here from Simone. How do you build safety measures around contractors deployed to emergency sites? Wade, I'm wondering if you might just tackle that one, and maybe Peter will get some thoughts from you from your industry perspective as well.
Well, some of the things that we have to do up front is, contractor vetting. So we use, third-party companies, ISNet World. And then a lot of companies have their own internal vetting processes when it comes to the health and safety side of the contractors that they're going to use. But what we do have, authority in the event of an emergency to use a non-vetted contractor. And in those particular cases, you end up having to watch them a little closer. And I think that's the critical thing is the pre-planning up front, where you have approved contractors that you're able to pull off of during an emergency. That's one of the key things is the pre-upfront planning is what I found. That way, when you're needing to call these people, those things are dealt with up front.
Great. Peter, you're working with a number of industries. How do you support them through this question?
Yeah, I think the pre-planning is obviously critical in the vetting and all that type of thing. And then it's ironic, we were just talking about this internally yesterday. There is, and I think probably the Red Cross or the Team Rubicon people could speak more to this, but there's the, on the ground, like you have to have processes and knowledge in place. And then you also have to accept that you have to be nimble as you're doing it. So you don't want to stop things because of paperwork type of issue, but there still is fundamental, back to this person's question, like how are we identifying hazards? How are we identifying the controls? So doing as much of that work ahead of time as you can, being committed to not putting people at risk, but also not holding up really time sensitive things. So a lot of that can be done by, as you said, Wade, more advanced, like on the ground supervision, like really experienced people, making sure that they're there and that's what they're paying attention to.
Great. Thomas or Steve, any comments that you'd like to add as we head towards our wrap up?
Yeah, maybe one thing to consider is would agree with my colleagues here. Absolutely, the pre-planning, that vetting as much as possible, and considering there will be just-in-time folks that'll have to be brought in, we won't have that opportunity. I think this is more on the emergency, the response side of things, and it's really you think of it more of a tactical approach. Is they certainly have to be involved in the incident action plan. They have to have your well-established safety officers, and those are the folks that'll actually be doing your real-time vetting of is the performance what we need them to be to immediately intervene. And I think that's a piece of the puzzle as well. As much as possible, if we have that vetted, we've got our proof of insurance and all of those things covered. And when we can't, then we have to have that real time, because that's really where things fall apart quickly. If we don't have well-established systems for folding those in with things like safety officers, whether it's a tailgate, your normal kickoff on an operational period and all of those. So it's just like bringing in an unfamiliar crew. It'd be a similar approach. Treat them as part of the system as well, in my experience.
Excellent. Thank you. These are the conversations that we could continue for many, many more minutes or hours, I'm sure. As we're drawing towards the end of our hour, I want to thank each of you for joining us as panel members on this, agreeing to sit in the hot seat. Quite willingly, actually. There's not a lot of arm twisting that was required. So thank you for that. I also want to give a shout out to the organizing committee, the folks from IAEM Canada, NAIT, ICS Canada, Team Rubicon Canada, Epic Podcasts, CRHNet, and special thanks to my team that helped to pull all this together from EML Canada. We have been recording this session. We've been recording the prior sessions. We've posted them all on our YouTube channel. So just through the QR code down there for you. Any closing comments from any of our panel members as we prepare to sign off?
The building on the relationships, and working with your municipalities, your provincial partners is absolutely critical. Egos have a tendency of getting in the way and sometimes causing you more issues, and it's important to have those dealt with as best you can, so that when you do get into an incident, things will go a little smoother.
Great. Thanks, Wade. If there's a theme that has emerged out of all three webinars, it's the importance of relationship building, the importance of the preparedness. It's so easy for us to fall into our response mindset, because that's the sexy part of this work. The preparedness side isn't quite as sexy, and the recovery side can be somewhat exhausting moving forward. So I appreciate the perspectives that each of you brought to this recovery conversation. And with that, I will sign us off and thank those of you that were able to join us today for this third session. Over the next week or so, we're going to be reaching out to everyone, ask for your insights from an evaluation perspective, and also we'll provide this link to the YouTube channel. So with that, thank you very much, and have a great week.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.